And we're back. Fellas, it's good to see you guys again, and it's been a long time, and honestly a time that I'm kinda a little ashamed of. But without further delay, it's good to be back. I moved halfway across the world, so things are still pretty kinda ghetto. I'm filming from my kitchen. I'm only using the light from the kitchen light. My camera's on a stack of books and a pile of salt, and this is my microphone. So you could say that I'm a little salty, but regardless, today we gotta talk about a weirdo ass friggin' game, and that is, of course, Pathologic 2.
Ooh boy, where do I even start with Pathologic 2? Well, I guess we should just start at the beginning. Some 15 years ago in Moscow, where a small Russian development studio by the name of Ice Pick Lodge released a game called, well, Pathologic. The original Pathologic, like its sequel, is a beast that I don't really know where to start with, because this game means so much to so many different people that having to play it and explain it ad nauseum kinda feels like talking to a crowd of people that seemingly don't speak the same language that you do.
Sound like a bunch of nonsense, don't it? Well, the fact of the matter is that it is nonsense. It's kinda messed up. So strap yourselves in, my friends, because this is gonna be a weird ass ride.
At its basis, Pathologic and its sequel is about stumbling your way into a Russian steppe town and being enveloped into a plague that will consume the entire town in 12 or so days. Unless you find a cure, and finding the cure means getting down and dirty in the local pagan folklore of this ancient, seedy steppe town. In order to find a cure for this sand plague, you have to make sure that you stay alive, and for that matter, make sure that the others stay alive as well, such as children, your best friend, the local town's mafioso, and of course, more importantly, yourself. Through the course of the game, you would get deeper into the weird crap these steppe pagans have going on, and all the while playing a role in a play about this very town and this plague. So you see weird things like mime-like reflections of people, and a lot of dialogue written in poetics or very colorful prose. Especially since a lot of this prose was poorly translated into English, probably because Ice Pick Lodge only had funds to get some poor gopnik to translate it and only pay him so little in rubles to even make his babusha's pensions look good.
Like so many different cult classics, like some of my favorites in Deadly Premonition or American McGee's Bad Day LA, it is a game that is absolutely full of jank, but it has a lot of redeeming qualities. Unless you're Bad Day LA, then you kind of have no redeeming qualities, but I still love that game.
Yeah, so many games like that seem to be poorly translated and wrought with mechanical and design issues up the wazoo. But there's an element with all these games that comes together, and it's that through their weirdness, they're really something unlike any other game out there. Pathologic gets its accolades not just because of the story that was written, but also for the way the story is presented and the unique way to play the game that I personally think hasn't really been bested until with the release of Pathologic 2.
So from now on, we're going to be talking about Pathologic 2, aka the game of this video. But all you really need to know is that the first game was a game that was quite ahead of its time in writing and style and a bunch of other things, but was verifiably broken in a bunch of other ways, whether it be the jank or the completely broken subtitles or the game being buggy as all hell.
At the current moment, you play the role of one Artemy Burak, a steppe surgeon that was whisked away from whatever he was doing in the capital by his father to return to his hometown, known as the town, or more specifically the Rostov-on-Gorkon, which is, well, very Russian. Immediately entering the town, it's very bizarre and otherworldly. There's stage lights that come out of nowhere to light up special scenes, people in weird costumes referring to you as an actor in a play, and some gravity-defying buildings that make you question your sanity. The largest juxtaposition you'll notice is the difference between normal people of the town and the inhabitants known as the kin, which are the people of the steppe and have a very different culture. The people of the town are in this weird period where they are rapidly industrializing and don't quite know how to deal with it. Symptoms of this rapid industrialization are the weird megastructures you find like the polyhedron, a gravity-defying tower that houses a majority of the town's children, or the abattoir and termitory, which is reminiscent of Soviet mass housing projects. It even feels like it on the inside. Now, for the steppe people, they don't hold the same beliefs on industrialization as the normal people do, as they believe that the earth will die if people continue to ravage for pedigree and simple pleasures. They're basically a bunch of dirty freaking hippies, but they got a bunch of cool aesthetics and they actually have a point to say, so they're okay in my book. After training weird secrets with Coffin Joe and learning some basics from the game's very surreal tutorial, you'll be placed in a situation where you reluctantly murdered 3 people in self-defense, which puts you in suspicion since it's also revealed that someone murdered your father on the previous night. This starts the major plot point of rediscovering the town over the course of following your father's murderer and making a name for yourself to help with your reputation, which I'll talk about soon. But around this point, you may be asking yourself, is this game a sequel or a remake? With the answer to that question is rather, let's say, complicated, like all things with Pathologic, but the short answer is that it's kind of both. For the most part, the game is doing the events of the first game all over again, though this time it's a little bit different. The actual in-game explanation is that the previous game, or Plea as it is coming to a close, and man did you fail at fulfilling your goal. Ooh boy, you actually failed horrendously. So like all things in life, the stage director gives you a choice to go back in time and redo the play again with the same actors and see if things change this time around, but for the most part, allusions to the previous games are all just very meta references to what happened years previous. So that takes us to an obvious question, which is, do I need to play the first game to understand what's going on? And the answer is a big, fat no. As I just said, Pathologic 2 is basically the first game remade and redeveloped to get a lot of the jank out of it, and in doing so it keeps the plot but completely changes some characters. Going into Pathologic 2 with a fresh outlook would almost be better than someone like myself that basically has a good idea of what's going on and is taking a look at it in a new but fascinating light. Though, the largest of these changes that you'll see right away is that the first game gives you a choice on who to play through the events of the story, while Pathologic 2 doesn't. To make a long story short, in the previous game you get to choose between Artemi Burak, also known as the Haruspex, the Bachelor, and the Changeling that all have their own predetermined backstory and skills that will help you in the world and changes their experience. Now at the moment in Pathologic 2, we only have Artemi, the Haruspex, to play through, and the reason being is that the game at this moment is part of one of 3-part release where the Bachelor and the Changeling will come out later. Now don't worry if this looks like some sort of early access kind of thing, because really it's furthest from the truth. The difference is that we can only play as one guy, and that is of course Artemi Burak. But since we are running through as Artemi, this current and as of this video only character to play as, the premise is that you're looking for your father, who some believe that has been killed by a Shabnak steppe demon. So of course, you have to look for it and investigate the town for any weird signs, which at this point is hard not to spot any really. But it's through this beginning act in the game where we'll get accustomed with a lot of the game's central mechanics, those being the survival mechanics dealing with yourself, and then by extension the mechanics of everyone else's well-being. To start off, this game is essentially a survival game at its core. You're constantly on the hunt for scrounging up food to eat, clean water to drink, fresh clothes to wear, and working scalpels to gut the hell out of people. There's several different elements that you're going to want to take care of while playing the game, those being your health, exhaustion, hunger, thirst, stamina, and finally immunity. Health, while being the most straightforward, is the one that correlates to all the other mechanics. If you're exhausted and hungry, then you'll lose maximum XP over time. Hunger and thirst are also pretty straightforward, as they require both to function at your peak, since hunger correlates to total HP and thirst correlates to total stamina. The more thirsty you become, the less stamina you'll have to do things like run and fight off the local infected and other vagabonding gopniks, so it is tantamount to keep your levels low. But it's these last two mechanics of immunity and exhaustion that really make it for me, because they're basically measuring time, and with it comes an immeasurable sense of decay. Time, while not measured in the traditional sense, would be something like the final unseen meter in Pathologic. It's something that's always in the background and you never seem to have enough of it. With the time that you have, you're tasked with not just healing yourself, but finding out how to cure the plague, and on top of that, helping and curing as many of the people that you care about. And the simple fact of the matter is that there just isn't enough time for everyone. So you're left with a choice of who you're going to save and what avenues are you going to pursue, and just know that not every avenue is the right one. So how do we get away with exhaustion? Well, you have to trade in your precious time, and every moment wasted is another black mark on the actions of Atami Burak. Pathologic 2 isn't just a game where you can sleep your time away or wait around for things to happen, since this game and its inhabitants won't wait for you. Don't do a quest within a day and bam, the avenue is closed for you forever, so you'll never know what happened. Since I've basically been talking about people and how they deal with you and reputation, there's gotta be something up with that, doesn't it? So, well, let's get into that. Basically, you can interact with nearly everyone in the town to get some sort of stuff, trade some coffee beans with a stepman to get some water, trade in some resources to fix up your shotgun, trade in walnuts with children to acquire 12-gauge shells for said shotgun. The opportunities to trade supplies for stuff found in the trash is near endless. But of course, this all depends on your relations with the people of the town that inhabit certain districts named after different anatomy, such as the spine, chine, the guts, and so on. If you do something to piss off people in one district of town, depending on the severity of it, it might spill over to other districts, but you would have to basically kill children to do that, which you can of course, but why would you do something so awful? Your reputation is essential in the dealings with the town's inhabitants. If they hate you, they're gonna send some goons after you to kill you. If they love you, then it's making trading things much easier and children much easier to exploit. Relations with the townsfolk and setting up all the characters and mechanics for Pathologic 2 is basically what the first few days are for, so you can get accustomed to it, because after that, whoosh, it gets whack. But you may be asking yourself, Tom, why do you need to explain ad nauseum to me, the viewer, all these mechanics? It kind of seems pretty straightforward, and the fact is that this game does not mess around. I'll be the first to say that I rarely enjoy games that have survival mechanics in them. To be honest, I find that a lot of them are just mindless busy work to pad out the lengths of some games that would normally be a lot shorter without them. I usually find that the survival horror does it right by having just the right amount of variables that you need to control and ration over to make it feel purposeful, because when you're not trying to get through, say, an undead horde, you will naturally need to manage health recovery items and weapons and ammo and the sort. Other variables like thirst, hunger, and exhaustion, I tend to find that there are these meters that pester you every 15 or so minutes to take care of, and there's no real sense of agency to it. It's just something that's currently prohibiting you from doing your current task for 5 or 10 minutes or so. And in Pathologic 2, that all changes because of one aforementioned thing, and that is, of course, time. When time is always moving and the plane continues its rampage no matter what you do, it provides the player a sense of agency in the events taking place. What you have to understand is that this game is not an empowerment fantasy. You at first seem to be coming into town to help your pappy out and solve this awful plague, till the crippling reality of living on the Russian steppe kicks in. You're not the hero here, you're just like the rest of these poor souls in this godforsaken town, suffering from one of the worst plagues in human history. And like any of those poor souls, you can be the next guy that gets thrown into the damn mass grave and get burned with the rest of them. And I love this change of pace. Because of these survival mechanics, it makes you relate with all the other characters in this world in a way that I never really felt in some of the other games. When you share the same everyday plight that they do, it becomes much easier to sympathize with these characters and their struggles become all the more real. You felt for these people and the goals and ambitions that they were trying to do in the town. So it only makes it all the more impactful and heart-wrenching when you're constantly given the choice between having to keep yourself alive or helping one of the main characters you have to take care of not succumb to the disease. And believe me, there's going to be tons of moments in the game where you think, ooh, if I can just get to the other side of town, I can survive just long enough to administer some medicine to someone who desperately needed, only to die for your troubles.
Well, you died. That's it. Game over. But Pathologic 2, maybe there's something else to die in.
When you die in Pathologic 2, it never really means the end, because once you die, you'll be brought up to the dreaded theater to get chastised by the playwright for the umpteenth time. From there, you get a nice speech saying that the game isn't over and will never be whenever you die. It just means that there's going to be some added consequences from this encounter. It might mean that you suffer from hunger faster, or you can never quite regain a level of thirst that you used to because in the end, it is a punishment for failing in a sense. But I've also had some of the most fascinating conversations in the game when you die, when it's reveling in whether or not all the effort, heartache, and pain is worth it just to save some inconsequential town on the steppe. Now of course you can alleviate all this by save scumming and just reloading to the last save, except whenever you die, these effects are placed on all the previous saves, so not even the metaphysical savior of just popping the latest.
Now, another thing that I want to talk about is quests and quest designs in Pathologic 2, because I honestly think that Pathologic 2 does it way better than a lot of other games.
You know, most normal games have these huge giant lists of the quests that you're going through, and it usually kinda looks like this, or something even worse, like this. Pathologic 2 arranges your quests, if you can even call them that, in what is basically known as your thoughts on the matter and how different things relate to each other. Larger quest chains will have a higher focus and work their way towards to making something truly worth your time, and it is something that naturally makes you think about a larger picture. It gives you the current information for what you know, but leaves a little blank space for events or knowledge that you still have to find out, telling you that there's more to this than that's already there. Another mechanic that I really like that happens semi-frequently is that there will be two quest lines that are seemingly unrelated, and you do one and it kinda goes nowhere, but then you do the other one and suddenly the missing point is now connected to both quest lines. It's a mechanic that genuinely makes you think and conceptualize what the hell is going on. Like it had me thinking and theorizing how things are gonna go down, only for the answer to be all the more whack, or sometimes so simple. The thoughts mechanic is especially juicy when you take into account the first Pathologic and you remember that in that game you didn't know where the hell to go, you didn't have a thoughts mechanic. So it was causing undue stress and you were wasting even more precious time. So it's an example where Pathologic 2 is not as forthcoming as other games can be, but it doesn't produce frustration like the first game does. And sometimes, these quest lines play against what we're accustomed to expect with these kind of games.
For example, it's kind of fitting and we're all accustomed to, checking off every single little quest as if it's like a tick in a box. But in Pathologic 2, that's really only kind of setting us up for failure. So let's give it a talk.
The quest design in this game takes everything that has to do with time into account for it to make some really devious choices. One especially devious one that I can think of is the times where if you do or don't do something, it'll give you the "some things aren't bound to happen" completion for a quest line, and it makes you think, oh, come on, man, I must have failed that quest line. But I didn't really figure it out until another playthrough that I had actually made the right choice. See, without spoiling anything, if I had actually gone and done this questline to completion, I wouldn't have done anything that would have helped anyone. If anything, I would have actually placed an entire district of the city in the way of the plague and caused one of your dear friends to be infected. And when you add on top of that the time it would have took to do that questline while you could have done something else, it becomes delightfully devilish in subverting our expectations.
Another thing that I love about Pathologic 2 is that all the quests, all the things that you have to do in the game, narrative-wise, all have to deal really with people and how the game presents these people and presents the conversations that you're going to have throughout the game is really cool, because a lot of other games, well, they don't do what this game tries to do.
And here I am trying to write to myself out of a hole because, oh boy, the presentation for Pathologic 2 is pretty damn whack. From the way that lighting works and of course the soundtrack. Now usually I leave the soundtrack for last, but there's some really cool stuff going on with the lighting that I'll leave that for later. One of the things for fans of the original Pathologic that you'll have to know is that this time they ended up changing the soundtrack quite a bit to match the game a bit more. Gone are the days where you'll be walking around listening to Mongolian Half-Life 2 music, since it's now changed to something more fitting to the overall aesthetic that Ice Pick Lodge is trying to convey. There's a lot of throaty step pieces to the music that does a great job of making you feel foreign and unsettled, because to be honest, the whole game is a recipe to make you feel foreign and, well, unsettled. It's sort of difficult to describe because the music from the first game was pretty damn weird, but it's weird for a different reason, and that's because the aforementioned Genghis Khan remix. Before the music, while it was interesting, it just sounded wholly out of place with what was going on screen, but it had that sort of weird quality that even though it didn't really work exactly with what was going on, it worked in presenting us a world that was odd, to say the least. That's not to say that the new soundtrack can't be weird and foreign to someone outside of the steppe, it's just that it's much more traditional sort of weird and unsettling in the sense that all of the weird elements in the game mesh together into a more presentable format than the first game did. So let's take a listen to a few tracks that Pathologic 2 has to offer.
Succeed. It is not old age or what comes after it that worries me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Outbreak. The theater is officially disbanded.
As well as other conveniences. Running water, access to your own children, who never leave their beloved polyhedron anyway, sewage, friendly smiles on the street, any respect for the institution of marriage, food, etc., etc.
And that kind of takes us into the art direction of this sequel/remake. In doing so, Pathologic 2, it gains a lot of things, but it also kind of loses a little bit.
See, in Pathologic 2, the art direction has been further refined to provide an even more unique and whack world, because with the sequel they really tried to hammer in that the town on the Gorkin is a steppe town that's in conflict with the larger world around them. As I've stated earlier, the town is struggling with either keeping its traditional steppe heritage or throwing it away in order to fuel the engine of progress in the Soviet Union. And for a lot of people, well, they kind of tend to choose both. You'll have the town look like a typical early 20th century Russian city, but then you go inside and find a variety of stepped carpets on the wall or bull horns on the local playground equipment, but the carpets might just be a general Slav thing. This generally drab and grounded setting is then juxtaposed with the local superstructures around the town, such as the giant and possibly standing wonder of the polyhedron, the local spot for children to hang out and be furries, or the people grindingness of the termitory, which houses the workers for Fat Vlad and chopping up bulls, or something like that. The one thing that the original did a bit better, in my opinion, is the contrasting between the mundane and the extraordinary. In the original, there was a stark contrast between the megastructures and the regular buildings of town. But now, in order for the game to have a much more focused aesthetic, that means we ain't gotta have some more weirder buildings, like the theater or the cathedral, though it's a genuine choice on the developers to make Pathologic 2 even more striking.
Perfect example of Ice Pick's Lodge's cool aesthetics and great design and world building is in the way that they've done the Plague, because in no other game, apart from maybe the first one, has the concept of a plague or a sickness been so interesting, engrossing, and ultimately disgusting and terrifying.
The Sand Pest, as it's known in Pathologic 2, is really something else when it comes to concept of enemies to defeat in games, because of course it's not something you can directly, attack with your fist or shoot with a gun. It only makes things worse when the plague starts to reveal itself as something more than just rudimentary. It's almost spiritual and metaphysical in a really spooky way. Before you even stumble into a plague district, you'll be shown with some of the solemn signs. There will be guardsmen guarding the entrances to these districts, and there's usually a huge pyre of some sort burning up the place. From there's this unsettling feeling of almost tinnitus in your ears that quickly encroaches a raw, deep, throaty steppe chant that, while unintelligible as a rudimentary language, speaks clearly across a dirge of death and decay that racks your nerves. The longer you stay in these districts, the worse it gets. With the ever so slight decline of your immunity, you feel as if you start to become more sluggish and start to succumb to the plague. And if you run out of immunity tablets and actually get infected, good luck with that, bud.
So a bit earlier, I was talking about the more meta elements of Pathologic 2 and how it almost has kind of like a theatric element to it. And right now we're going to talk about how there's way more into the theatrics than you might just think.
Pathologic 2 does things with lighting that, if you're a huge cinemaphile, or more easy to understand the term of film snob like myself, you're really going to appreciate what they've done to hammer in the theatrics. The world will have these otherworldly spotlights shining a light to focus on peculiar scenes throughout the town. Whether to draw attention to an object or a person, it's fascinating how it does its job to bring focus to that subject. The lighting is even more pronounced when you center it on people and start conversations with them, as it does the spotlight aesthetic, but really ramps up the stage theatrics as well, as all is shut out from the world except this harsh light on the person in question. All the world, all the thoughts of what you were doing and what you're going to do is snuffed out so you can have these conversations with people, and it creates these incredibly intimate conversations with the other characters that hammer in the levity of Artemis' quest to cure the town. Because these characters over the course of the game become so important to the player that in the final sequences of Pathologic 2, some of these penultimate conversations really tug on the heartstrings. Now, what's interesting with this spotlight is that with certain characters, the light shines on them differently to signify different tones that these characters are trying to convey. Some characters are in full spotlight who are usually forthcoming with all the information they provide to you, while more mysterious characters are partly illuminated, with something either blocking the light shining on them or only parts of their face being illuminated. It's a more cinematic technique that derives itself less from stage plays and more on the wonderful world of cinematography.
Overall, the presentation of this game is something to me that just puts it at another level above the rest of the riffraff. But then you kind of wonder to yourself, why haven't you heard of it? Why haven't I seen it being lauded from the heavens? Well, there's a reason for that.
So here's the thing, fellas. There's these people out there that play these things called video games, and for the most part try to take in as much of the game as they can when it comes to gameplay, story, and presentation, and other contextual elements, and put them together and try and make a cohesive statement. Hell, I just did that. Though barely and not without a few hiccups, we like to call this activity reviewing, and the people who do them, reviewers. Or, if you make money doing this,
corporate fucking shill, you're another whore in the capitalist gangbang.
but in all seriousness, they're just reviewers.
Now, just between you and me, what a lot of people have done to Ice Pick Lodge, especially these reviewers, have been genuinely kind of cruel. It's basically an unmitigated moida, but the thing they have to understand is that most of these reviewers, they're hack frauds. I'm a fraud myself, but these people, they're a hack fraud.
Reviewers and game journalists, though of course, not all of them, have completely derided Pathologic 2. And why do you ask? Well, because they believe that the game is too damn hard. So these people are complaining that Pathologic 2 is too damn difficult and that it's unfair to the player, even though, as I've hopefully elaborated in the video thus far, that this game, while challenging, is challenging for a reason and not done with thoughtlessness. The challenge that comes with Pathologic 2 is in taking great pains to come to the bottom of a goddamn plague, and knowing that you and everyone else you care about might not make it till the end. While the game doesn't hold your hand, it gives you all the tools at your disposals to try and combat this plague, and attempting to do this quest provides us an engrossing and introspective journey that everyone should embark on.
So why am I ranting about friggin' reviewers? Well, that's because the reviewers, like the dicks that they are, basically blew off this game, gave it mediocre or terrible scores, and that has really kind of been part of the element of why this game isn't doing so well financially.
Now, this might come across as kind of unprofessional, but, I am an amateur reviewer. But there's a part of my soul that wants Ice Pick Lodge to make so much damn money with Pathologic 2, because for one, and less importantly, I want to see them finish the Bachelor and Changeling storylines. But more importantly, I want Ice Pick Lodge to succeed because they damn well deserve it. And even though the script was written way back before any of the current stuff going on between Russia and Ukraine, the developers for this game have gone through so much to create this wonderful, beautiful passion project that aims to create the perfect version of their cult classic. In every avenue, Pathologic 2 completely excels at what it does, from creating a challenging but incredibly rewarding survival system that is perfectly tied to an engrossing, wonderful story that shines its whack black mirror right back at the player and asks us what's there. Pathologic 2 is an introspective journey that we have never really seen before and deserves to be in its pantheon of games that transcends the medium into a realm where I can quantifiably call the product as we have on our hands as art. And I urge you to go out there and buy this game right now, fellas. This is not a trip that you want to miss, and for the humble price of 40 Canadian dollars or about 30 euros, I think, this game is an absolute steal for the crazy journey that it embarks you on. If there's one thing that you should take away from this video, is that you should not look at any of these middling reviews for the game and just take a deep plunge into it, because the less you know about this game and its twists, the better.
I can't believe we're here at this score once again, because I would have thought, there's no way I'm gonna do another game with a good old masterpiece rating so quickly.
It transcends having a simple score to bring this game down into a system that these goddamn review aggregate sites can crunch into an average to put on a storefront, because this game is that damn good. Go out and pick up this game if you know what's good for you, and fellas, if there's one piece of advice I will say when delving into this beast, it's that you try as hard as you can and get lost into this world to the fullest ability. It might not be a thing for you, but please guys, give this bad boy a try, because honestly, it's been stuck in my head rent-free since the game came out in 2019 and will probably be there for a considerable time.
But before we wrap up this video, let's kind of talk about Ice Pick Lodge, where they're at, what's the state of the game, and what you need to understand going into it and what the future may hold.
So quite a few years have come by since the release of Pathologic 2, almost 4 in fact, and still the paths for the Bachelor and the Changeling are nowhere to be found. And that is of course because of the peculiar financial situation over at Ice Pick Lodge. See, because of the multitude of factors, the studio still isn't really well known and needs to fight tooth and nail for every single release of their lack of shmoney, and naturally it is the same way with the Bachelor content for Pathologic 2. In order to fund the Bachelor route, Ice Pick Lodge is developing smaller titles, one of which is known by Know by Heart, that released earlier this year. The game follows a man reuniting with his friends in an adulthood in an old Russian town, and all goes well until, it doesn't. I haven't played it yet, but knowing the other titles they have developed, I will surely probably enjoy it, and if you pick up and enjoy Pathologic 2, then maybe give these guys a hand and pick up Know by Heart as well. Last thing I want to touch on briefly before we wrap this whole game up is the PS4 port of the game that at every opportunity I would recommend to absolutely do not play. Apart from the fact that it is absolutely bug-filled, that they most likely do not intend to patch out the game, it runs terribly on the PS4, and you would be better off in playing it on PC than playing it at 5 frames a second.
Well, fellas, here we are. This is the end of the video. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate every single one of you that make it this far and enjoy my content. If you're new, well, hey, welcome to the channel. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you really liked it, then maybe I would suggest go on, take a look at my backlog, and see what is there. But kind of some house cleaning stuff to do at the end of the video. Basically, I moved all the way to Italy, so things have changed. Things have changed quite drastically. I no longer live in the house where there was a lot of noise and things like that. Don't worry. To the people that are there, I still love you guys, but this place, it has a lot of peace and quiet, but of course, with it comes different problems, like the fact that I'm filming in my kitchen because the house is kind of small, and that there's a lot of echo in this old place. Things might change. I hope, they're going to change a long time, but might be filming from a different location, might be keeping it here, who knows, but things are changing. I'm here. I got a lot of time in my hands, so this kind of hiatus between videos, or like it's been before where, I don't make a video for 8, 10, 12 months, a year almost, that's going to stop. I'm going to try, now that I have my own place, my own peace and quiet, I'm not working yet. We'll see how it goes. But right now, I want to do videos, and I want to focus on the videos. I want to bring more content to you guys that enjoy my stuff so much. So for all the people that are here, thank you so much. For all the people that are new, thank you again. I hope you really love my stuff. Maybe if you do, maybe you should check my other videos. And if you like them, maybe you should subscribe. Or if you like my normal videos and you still aren't subscribed, shame on you. That's despicable and disgusting. But without further delay, fellas, this is Tomthechosen1 getting fat on wine and cheese in Italy, and I'll catch you guys next time.